Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 28 July 2018. Now let us begin. Now we have taken the first article from page 1, a news on the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018 that has been given by B. N. Sri Krishna Committee has been continued further on page 8 and page 9. So the first thing that we'll do with regards to this article is understand the important terms that have been used in these articles and would also be used in the future with regards to the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018. And after that, we'll try to understand the important features of the bill. And both of these aspects would provide you a basic understanding on what these four articles talk about and on any future news that comes on the B. N. Sri Krishna Committee report with regards to the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018. Now the first term that you need to understand is what is data. Now the term data in this bill means any form of information, facts, concepts, opinions or instructions that can be used for communication, interpretation or to be processed by humans or non-human automated means such as by artificial intelligence. The second important term that you should understand is what is personal data and how it differs from basic data. Now personal data is any data which is relating to a natural person. Now by natural it means a person like you and me and not a person which has been artificially created through computers, fake identities or any other aspect. So therefore personal data means any data relating to us which may directly or indirectly identify any form of characteristics, trait or attribute or any other feature of our identity. And apart from this, the bill has also defined as to what would be our sensitive personal data. Now, sensitive personal data means any data which reveals or is related to our passwords, financial data, data about our health, our sexual orientation, biometrics, genetics, our caste or tribe, our religious or political belief, among other forms of our personal data. And under this bill, as to what would constitute as being sensitive personal data would be specified by the Data Protection Authority. The fourth aspect that this bill identifies and defines is what would constitute as processing of personal data. Now by processing personal data, the bill means an operation or a set of operations that have been performed on personal data. Now by operation or set of operations, it means various processes that can be carried out by artificial intelligence or by a simple computer, such as the collection of personal data, the storage of personal data, the use or disclosure of personal data. And so processing of personal data would mean making the personal data of a particular person available, restricting it, erasing or destroying a particular set of personal data of a particular person. So now hopefully you have understood the first four terms of what is data, what is meant by personal data, what is sensitive personal data, and how the bill intends to define what is processing personal data. Now the fifth aspect that this bill tries to define is what is profiling. Now profiling is any form of processing of personal data, wherein by processing it means any form of analysis or prediction, and this analysis or prediction is done on a data that has been collected on a person which contains the personal information with regards to that person's behavior, attributes or interest. The sixth term that you should understand is data fiduciary. Now data fiduciary means any person, the government or entities of the government of India, a company or any individual who alone or in conjunction with others determines the purpose and means of processing of personal data. Now the seventh term that you should understand is data processor. Now data processor means any person including the government of India or its entities, any company or any individual who processes personal data on behalf of a data fiduciary. But a data processor does not include any employee of the data fiduciary. So data fiduciary determines the purpose and means of processing of personal data, while data processor processes that personal data on behalf of a data fiduciary. Now the eighth and the final term that you should understand is right to be forgotten. Now right to be forgotten refers to the ability of an individual like you and me to limit, delink, delete or correct any form of information that is available on me or you on the internet that we consider to be misleading, embarrassing, irrelevant or anachronistic. So now hopefully up till here you've understood as to what is profiling, what is data fiduciary and data processor, and lastly you also understand as to what is meant by right to be forgotten. So now hopefully you've understood the 8 terms that are required to be understood with regards to the Justice B. N. Sri Krishna Committee report on the draft Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018. So now with this, let us now move on to understanding what are the features of the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018. Now the first feature of the Personal Data Protection Bill is that it would apply to both government entities and private entities. The second main feature of this bill is that the applicability of this law will extend to data fiduciaries or data processors that are also not present within the territory of India. So this law would be applicable to data fiduciaries or data processors such as Google, Facebook and others which do not have servers which are present within the territory of India. The third aspect of this bill is that it places restrictions and conditions on the cross-border data flows. The fourth aspect of this bill is that the central government can classify any sensitive personal data as critical personal data and therefore mandates the storage of this critical data and its processing exclusively within India. The bill also seeks to establish a Data Protection Authority of India, wherein this Data Protection Authority would be an independent authority empowered to oversee the enforcement of this bill. The sixth aspect of this bill is that the Data Protection Authority will be governed by a board which would consist of 6 whole-time members, and the chairperson of this board would be appointed by the Union government on the recommendation of a selection committee. The seventh and the final aspect of this bill that you should remember is that the bill also provides for an appellate tribunal, and this appellate tribunal would adjudicate cases pertaining to data security or data breach. So now hopefully you've understood the basic features of the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018. Now with regards to your UPSC syllabus, the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018 and the Justice Sri Krishna Committee report would be placed in GS paper 2 within the section Governance and in the subsection Government Policies and Interventions for Development in Various Sectors and Issues Arising Out of Their Design and Implementation. And the second subsection it would also be placed in is Important Aspects of Governance, Transparency and Accountability. Now you have to understand that the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018 is currently only a bill and is yet to be passed by the Parliament of India. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this article talks about is the conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Now we will be analyzing this article from the perspective of your prelims examination and not your mains examination, because neither Ethiopia and Eritrea are in India's neighborhood and nor their conflict or their resolution is currently affecting India's interest. Now before understanding as to what is important with regards to Ethiopia-Eritrea conflict for your prelims examination, you need to understand as to why it is important for your prelims examination. Now we have taken this question from the prelims of 2018. Now this question gives 4 towns that are sometimes mentioned in the news. And in similarly, it also gives 4 countries and asks which of the pairs given above are correctly matched. Now this question would be placed in the section World Geography and more specifically Physical Geography of the World. Now you have to understand that these towns have not been randomly asked, but there has been a particular event that has happened in these towns which is of international importance. So if you take the example of just Kirkuk, which is located in Syria, and Kirkuk was recently in the news because of the Kurdish referendum, wherein Kirkuk is considered as the Jerusalem of the Kurdish people. And during the Kurdish referendum, there was a conflict between the Syrian government and the local Kurdish government over conducting the referendum in the town of Kirkuk. And before the Kurdish referendum, Kirkuk was also in the news because of the Battle of Kirkuk, which was fought between the Kurdish forces and ISIS. And in similar terms, there was a current event of international importance that also happened in Aleppo, Mosul, and Mazar-e-Sharif. So now hopefully up till here you've understood as to why towns that are asked in the prelims examination under the section of World Geography are related to current events of international importance. And it is within this context that the Ethiopia-Eritrea conflict becomes relevant for your prelims examination. Because what is required to be known from this article for your prelims examination is about the town of Badme. Now what has happened is that Ethiopia has decided to implement the peace agreement with Eritrea, that they had signed in the year 2000. And the reason this is important is that this Ethiopian decision to implement the peace agreement with Eritrea may resolve the Ethiopian-Eritrea conflict, which began in 1998. And apart from this, the Ethiopian decision to implement the peace agreement may resolve the main reason for the Ethiopia-Eritrea conflict, which is the town of Badme. So now hopefully up till here you've understood that Ethiopia and Eritrea conflict began in 1998, wherein initially Ethiopia and Eritrea were once one country. However, after a civil conflict, the region of Eritrea gained independence from Ethiopia. However, both of these countries began a conflict for the town of Badme, which lies on their border. And it was in the year 2000 that both Ethiopia and Eritrea signed the peace agreement. However, the country of Ethiopia did not implement the decisions that were agreed upon in the peace agreement. However, recently, the new government that has been established in Ethiopia has decided to implement the peace agreement. And then there is a chance that the conflict over the town of Badme may be resolved. So, hopefully, from this article, what you need to remember for your prelims examination is that Badme is a border town between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And apart from this, what you should also understand is that Badme is currently located within the country of Eritrea. And Ethiopia has said that it will recognize that Badme is a part of Eritrea to resolve the Ethiopian-Eritrea conflict. So hopefully you have understood as to why Ethiopia-Eritrea conflict is relevant with regards to your prelims examination. And moreover, you also understand that Badme, which is a border town between Ethiopia and Eritrea and is currently located in the country of Eritrea, is relevant to be remembered from the perspective of world geography in your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now I've taken this article from page 5. Now what this article talks about. Now according to the All India Survey on Higher Education report of 2017 and 18, the total number of teachers in higher education institutions has decreased. Now this All India Survey on Higher Education is conducted by the Ministry of Human Resource and Development. And the Ministry of Human Resource and Development has been conducting the All India Survey on Higher Education from 2010-11 onwards. And according to the recent report of 2017-18, the total number of teachers, which may include professors, associate professor, assistant professor, guest faculties, among other, who are faculties in higher education in India, has decreased. Now let us understand the reason as to why there has been a decrease in faculties in higher education. Now the first reason given in the article is that the retired posts are not being filled. Now it means that whenever a person who's at the professor or the associate professor level retires from his post, the post of that professor or associate professor is not being filled. The second reason given in the article is that fresh vacancies are not being filled. Now according to the article, any fresh vacancies that are given by universities are not being filled properly, and one of the reasons is that recruitment for fresh vacancies is being hampered by judicial cases. And the third and the last reason given in the article is that vacancies that need to be filled in universities cannot be dictated by the Ministry of Human Resource and Development. Because if it is being forced by the Ministry of Human Resource and Development, it would violate the autonomy of the universities. Now hopefully up till here you also understood the three reasons highlighted in the article as to why the total number of faculties have dipped in higher education. Now the first reason given in the article is that retired posts are not being filled, wherein if someone retires from the post of professor or associate professor, the retired post of that professor or associate professor is not being filled by the universities. The second reason given in the article is that fresh vacancies are not being filled by the universities. And one of the reasons is that the recruitment is being hampered by judicial cases. So let's say if a university gives an advertisement for the recruitment of assistant professors, the recruitment process gets hampered by individuals who file judicial cases on the process of that recruitment. And the third and the final reason given in the article is that the filling of vacancies needs to be done by the universities and it cannot be dictated or forced upon by the Ministry of Human Resource and Development. Because if it is forced by the Ministry of Human Resource and Development, it would violate the autonomy of the universities. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the focus of this article. So now let us understand as to where it would be placed in your UPSC syllabus. Now this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS paper 2 within the section Social Justice, and within the subsection, issues relating to development and management of education. As to who conducts the All India Survey on Higher Education needs to be remembered from the perspective of your prelims examination. And the fact that the total number of teachers in higher education has decreased and the reasons for it is required for a basic understanding towards the issues relating to the development of education in your mains examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 9. Now what this article talks about is that India has been chosen as the nodal center for preparing for flash floods. And this designation of India as a nodal center for preparing for flash flood forecast has been given by the World Meteorological Organization. Now a flash flood is a sudden local flood caused typically by heavy rainfall in a short span of time. Now, under this designation as a nodal center, India will have to develop a customized model system that can issue 6-hour advance warning of floods to countries such as Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Thailand. And this customized model system that is needed to be prepared by India is being tried out by the Indian Meteorological Department or IMD. And this system would be called the Flash Flood Guidance System. And this flash flood guidance system would use a combination of satellite mapping and ground-based observations that will provide forecasts for flash floods 6 hours in advance. And this guidance system will provide the forecast by computing the likelihood of rainfall, soil moisture levels, and other aspects to warn Asian countries of possible floods. However, there is one concern with this system is that the warning system from India to other Asian countries from which India can warn of flash floods is yet to be formed. So this means that India under the flash flood guidance system would be able to forecast flash floods, but it currently does not have the ability through which it can warn other Asian countries of those flash floods. So now hopefully up till here you've understood as to why this article is in the news. Now apart from this, what else you should understand is what is the World Meteorological Organization. Now, the World Meteorological Organization is an intergovernmental organization that was established by the ratification of the World Meteorological Organization Convention in 1950 in the United Nations. And so, the World Meteorological Organization has become the specialized agency of the United Nations for meteorology, operational hydrology, and related geophysical sciences. And the Secretariat of the World Meteorological Organization is headquartered in Geneva and is headed by the UN Secretary General. So now hopefully you also understand the basic facts about the World Meteorological Organization. Now with regards to UPSC examination syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS paper 3 within the section Disaster Management and the subsection Disaster and Disaster Management. While the facts on the World Meteorological Organization become relevant with regards to your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 9. Now what this article talks about is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping of China have reaffirmed the promises that they had made during the Wuhan Summit, wherein President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently met during the BRICS Summit. So now what we'll do with regards to this article is understand what was agreed upon during the Wuhan Summit in terms of direction to the militaries on confidence building measures and other aspects of the Wuhan Summit. Wherein, according to the author, the Wuhan Summit, which was held between India and China, is meant to ensure that India and China differences are negotiated in a rational manner, wherein both countries would pursue strategic communication as means for future India-China negotiations. Now hopefully up till here you've understood the focus of the article, wherein according to the author, the Wuhan Summit is meant to ensure that India-China differences are negotiated in a rational manner, wherein both countries would pursue strategic communications as means for future India-China negotiations. And with respect to this, the author has given two examples, wherein strategic communication to ensure that India-China differences are negotiated in a rational manner can be seen in form of the strategic guidance that has been issued to the respective India and China militaries so as to strengthen communication for effective management of border affairs. And the second example given by the author is of future communication on a joint project between India and China in Afghanistan. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've also understood that the author has given two examples as means of strategic communication, which is meant to ensure that India China differences are negotiated in a rational manner. Wherein the first example is the strategic guidance that was issued to the respective militaries of India and China so as to strengthen their communication for effective management of border affairs. And the second example is of future communication on joint projects between India and China in Afghanistan. So now hopefully you understand that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping have reaffirmed the principles that they agreed upon during the Wuhan Summit. Now this article and the explanation given in this section should be understood in terms of a basic understanding of India-China relations from the perspective of international relations from your civil service examination syllabus. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.